In 2013, English royal Kate Middleton gave birth to a son in line to be the future King of England. The news of his birth was an enormous spectacle. It was broadcast for days to every country on the planet. Heads of state from around the world sent their congratulations. Prince George was born at St. Mary's Hospital in London. In sharp contrast, the woman St. Mary's Hospital was named for gave birth to her son in far more humble circumstances. Her son's arrival was hidden from the powerful and well-connected and proclaimed only to humble shepherds in the dark of night. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder, and his name will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. The prophet Isaiah, 700 years before the birth of Jesus. What an incredible picture of Jesus, written about 700 years before his birth. A royal birth that came without fanfare to a setting that was truly humble. To visualize the humble beginnings of Jesus, it's important to understand what homes looked like here in the first century. One of the things I love about driving through Israel is that I get to see all sorts of ancient ruins and authentic recreations. Homes in first century Bethlehem were pretty simple, usually two-room affairs built over a cave-like basement. Now, the larger room was where a family cooked, lived, and slept. The smaller room, known as the Cataluma, was used for storage and occasional guests. Underneath all that was this cave-like basement used for livestock. Now, families relied heavily on animals for meat, milk, and farming, so at nighttime they brought in these very valuable creatures to avoid robbers and predators. The Gospel of Luke says, when Mary and Joseph arrived in Bethlehem, there was no room in the Cataluma, so they ended up in the basement with all the animals. And since the word Cataluma was the word used in the Gospels, it's very likely that they had gone to stay at the home of an extended family member or friend. Now, the Roman census was creating a lot of chaos for an awful lot of people. So it's very likely that other family members had just gotten there early and called dibs on the guest room. I speculate. At any rate, in a cave, surrounded by animals, is not where most mothers would choose to have their baby. So now you have a picture of the humble setting for Jesus' birth about 2,000 years ago. A birth foretold to occur in the town of Bethlehem, just a few miles outside of Jerusalem. Time to load up and drive to present-day Bethlehem myself, where my first stop will be the Church of the Nativity. Now, in order to get to the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem, you have to pass over into the Palestinian territories. Now, in order to do that, you have to go through armed security and through the wall that Israel built to divide the two. It's an impossible to ignore reminder of the tensions that exist between people groups. You are viscerally aware that you're not in Kansas anymore. Not that you were in Kansas before, but anyway. When you emerge from the other side of the wall, you'll see a long line of taxis who will take you to your destination for a reasonable fee. You know, things could always change, but every time I've gone into Bethlehem, I've met wonderful people and I've brought back wonderful memories of this very special place on earth. This is the oldest standing church in continual use in the Holy Land. It's 1,449 years old. It's amazing to me. This is the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem. And as old as it is, it's the second such Christian church built on this same site. The first building, built by Roman Emperor Constantine and his mother Helena in the 4th century, was burned and destroyed when the Samaritans rose up against the Byzantine Empire in the mid-500s. But shortly thereafter, Roman Emperor Justinian began rebuilding this, the current structure, in 556 AD. Modified over the years, it is said to have retained the architectural tone of the original church building as built by Constantine himself. But look, a piece of the old church survived. You can still see this large remnant of the floor from Constantine's original construction. This dates back to 339 AD, which makes it 1,675 years young, as Granddad would say. Now, this surviving piece of the original floor was rediscovered in 1934 while they were doing some repair work. Its craftsmanship is amazing. According to very early tradition, Mary gave birth to Jesus in a cave just beneath this altar. Now, this cave, or grotto, as it's known here in the church, is marked by a 14-point silver star. Now, as the genealogy of Jesus is described in the Gospel of Matthew, the 14 points of this star represent the 14 generations from Abraham to David, 14 from David to the Babylonian exile of the Jewish people, and 14 from the exile to the birth of Jesus. Now, the tradition that Jesus was born here dates back to the 1st century, having been a pilgrimage site for many early Christians. In fact, Christian apologist Justin Martyr, who lived from 100 to 165 AD, along with other church fathers, identifies this as the site for Jesus' birth. And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling cloths, and laid him in a manger. Luke 2:7. Mangers in ancient Israel were feeding and watering troughs for livestock, typically carved from limestone. In fact, you can still find a number of stone mangers at archaeological sites in Israel today. In Christmas scenes today, the mangers are usually represented to be made out of wood. That's probably because we tend to visualize things with a Western perspective. But whether it was wood or stone, a manger is generally used for feeding livestock, and not as a crib for a baby.